Day one of the FNCS Global Championship is over, and we have Peterbot and Poyo absolutely dominating, silencing a lot of the haters of Peterbot, saying he wouldn't be able to perform on LAN. But will he be able to hold on, and do I think he can actually win it? Now, I want to talk about what caused the event to be delayed by up to 2 hours, and why we almost ran the biggest tournament of the year with Jetpacks in the game. I also want to talk about a lot of the big names who are struggling, Clix and Veno falling off a little bit towards the end, Cammy and Seti way down the leaderboard, what's going on with some of these teams, and will they bring it back on the second day? There's a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. Before we get into talking about how the event went, we have to talk about how the event started, or didn't start. If you're watching, you know what happened. If you weren't watching, I'll fill you in. Basically, there was a pretty much, I think, an hour and a half unexpected break at the start of the tournament before games even began. We walked all the players out, we did all the pre-show, we did all that, we're about to jump into game. Nothing happened. The casters are doing their usual, oh, who do you think's gonna do well? And they're filling, and you can tell something's wrong, but that's not unusual. Fortnite, someone didn't load in, someone crashed, whatever. Then it kept going. Then they threw to a break. Then they threw to another break. Then they threw to a 30-minute break, and everyone's wondering at this point, what has gone wrong? We're getting photos on social media of players crashing. We saw Malibuka's PC crash, but turns out, after hearing from quite a few of the players, it turns out they left Jetpacks in competitive on the Fortnite that was loaded onto the PC. You're probably wondering, Aussie, what do you mean the Fortnite on the PC? Basically, Epic Games makes a custom snapshot or a custom version of Fortnite that the LAN is played on. It's separate from the regular game. So I believe the point of that was to make it easier to change things if anything goes wrong. But apparently, it was loaded onto an old update that still had Jetpacks. Now, you're probably thinking, how did this happen? How did Fortnite not test the setups? They did. They did rehearsal games the night before, and I got told Jetpacks were in. That's really weird, but there's still a whole night to fix it. Then they did rehearsals like an hour before the tournament's supposed to start to test the stage, and Jetpacks were still in. And then apparently they then had to get all the players out so they could reload the new update onto each of the PCs to remove the Jetpacks. Otherwise, they were just going to play the LAN with Jetpacks. Now, that would have been the most Fortnite thing ever. They did end up getting it fixed, and I know there's a lot that goes into these events. I probably don't even understand half of what goes into these events, so maybe this is something that is easy to do. I don't know, but it was a very interesting start that had a lot of people very confused. But despite all this, it seemed like most people kept the vibes really high. There was a few jokes going around social media, but as far as the Twitch numbers went, as far as the crowd went, the vibes were still there, which was honestly interesting. I really thought with an hour and a half unexpected break, people would start to get a bit tired. I don't know about the players. I'm sure the players started to feel it by the end of the tournament, but I wanted to at least explain why the break happened in the first place. Speaking of the actual event, and I can't believe I'm about to do this, to no one's surprise, Peterbot and Poyo are absolutely dominating in first on 442 points, beating out Thomas and Queasy in second on a very respectable 295 points. At this point, Peterbot and Poyo are on pace to get over 1,000 points in a LAN event. No, you're thinking, Aussie, 442, that's not. It's because tomorrow's a 1.5 times multiplier. So they're set to get over 1,000 points at a LAN event. And obviously we've had a lot of smack talk going on this year from a lot of European pros, a lot of European fans saying, oh, Peterbot and Poyo could never do this on EU, bro. They're only doing NA. Why is NA letting them do this? Why are you giving them all the best drops? Why this, why that? Well, apparently even on an international stage with the best players from every region, they're still letting him do it. I mean, at this point, there's not really much you can do. Peterbot and Poyo are getting their half of the raft uncontested. There was rumors there was going to be 3 teams dropping on Peterbot and Poyo. There was supposed to be Trashy, there was supposed to be Swizzy, and there was supposed to be Kazi. Now, OCE's Kazi has no longer dropped there at the raft, meaning Peterbot and Poyo is getting his half uncontested. Meanwhile, Swizzy and Trashy are fighting over their half as well. Now, throughout the tournament, Swizzy and Trashy have been doing quite well. Now they've dropped down outside the top 10, but both of them have found themselves around or in that top 10 at some point. So like they need to fire Peterbot. They're doing quite well, but Peterbot and Poyo are absolutely dominating. They finished off the day with 2 back-to-back wins, a 10 elim win and 11 elim win in their last 2 games. They've done this on top of an 8 elim 7th, a 3 elim 15th, a 12 elim 2nd, and a 1 elim 18th. So at this point, Peterbot and Poyo are heating up, and I feel like for the rest of the competition, honestly, quite lucky we had the break. I think Peterbot and Poyo are going to come out and take it on day 2. They were in my top 3 for a reason. I had them in my top 3 even when they were contested by another team. Now they're uncontested. It is looking ridiculous at this point. Now, I also have to point out Peterbot. He has over 10,000 damage himself this tournament right now. That is absolutely ridiculous. He has a damage ratio of 2.77. What that means is he is doing 2.7 damage for every damage he takes, which in a competitive setting with Storm Surge is extremely important. He is absolutely popping off. Now, Poyo is also doing really well as well. Poyo is also in top 10 on damages. They have an average elims of 7.5. They've dropped 45 eliminations in just 6 games of a LAN event. They are looking as dominant as they were on NA at an international level. Obviously, the cheating discussion around Peterbot has been going on for ages now. I have addressed it a super long time ago. I put it behind me and said the same thing. There is no way Peterbot is cheating at this point, and if Peterbot is cheating, I completely give up on this game because there's no way you can compete at this level for this long without getting caught or getting in trouble. And now I feel like anyone, like literally the last kid who truly thought Peterbot cheated, had all the evidence, really believed it. You have to see a performance like this and think maybe he's not cheating. Like he can still do this on LAN. Remember, he just came second at the Esports World Cup as well. So second at the last LAN event he played at. Now in first in this LAN event, he looks just as dominant at LAN as he did online. I feel like at this point, it might be time to give it up. I know kids will still hate. I know kids will still find a reason. I'm already seeing people say that if, you know, Swizzy could play with Vanya instead of Yapko, he'd be keying Peterbot and beating him every game on spawn, so it doesn't really count. You're obviously going to have that. People just don't like Peterbot. I get it. He can be toxic at times. He's just not everyone's favorite person, so I get why people are trying to take it away from him. I do think if Swizzy could have played with Vanya, it might have looked a little bit different. Again, super unfortunate. Swizzy's playing with Yapko. They're doing really well. They look really strong, but it's not his actual duo. So if Swizzy and Vanya were playing at the Raft, maybe things would look different. But again, I said in yesterday's video, despite whoever wins, I really want to make sure we're actually celebrating who wins and not trying to find reasons to take it away from them. It's the Fortnite scene. They're going to do it regardless, but I thought I would point out that as well. Now, Thomas and Queasy are doing exceptionally well in second place on 295 points. They got a 10 elim win in their second game. They're doing this out of Research Rock, which if you don't know what that is, it's that tiny little POI right down to the southeast of Mount Olympus. So they're doing very, very well. Thomas HC's aim has looked as insane as it always has with the Monarch pistol. It's like his mini sniper, his mini DMR. Queasy's IGLing has been exceptional. Their high ground play on game 2 was really, really nice. I think they can have a good run tomorrow. Do I think anyone catches up to Peterbot and Poyo? At this point, it's going to be really hard. It's a 1.5 times multiplier, like I said, so teams could do it, but it's going to be tough. Now, any team that could do it, and I know they're behind Thomas and Queasy, but Vico and Flixie, because they have the firepower right now to drop those big games. They had a really good start. They got a 7 elim second in their first game and a 9 elim first in their fourth game, but their last 2 games, not too bad, a 6 elim 11th, but then unfortunately a 2 elim 29th in game 6 slowed them down. Now, if you watched any of my content last season, you know what Vico's team and Peterbot's team have in common. Their coach, Razaru. He is an absolute genius at this game. The fact that 2 of the teams he's coaching are currently in top 3 after both winning FNCS last season, they're just on an insanely dominant tear, and Vico and Flixie looked really good out there. They are playing so aggressive. They're WQing every team just like they were playing a Cash Cup, and so far it's working really, really well. We have Clix and Chicho in 4th, a team that has done really well, came top 3 at the last LAN event, done really well on EU that a lot of people have been talking about, hyping up. I ended up putting them in my top 10. I did this more off other people's recommendations. I don't watch much Clix and Chicho because what they do is just, they get the fundamentals so right. Again, you think of surge bases, that's the Chicho Trulex tower. Again, that's what people talk about when they think of surge basing, but it might not be pretty, it might not be the most exciting playstyle, but it's very good and it's very consistent, and that's what they're doing really, really well. They're playing very, very consistent Fortnite here. Their worst game was a 4 elim 17th. That is a really, really good spot to be in, and unless something goes crazy wrong tomorrow, Trulex and Chicho look like they're going to be able to hold on to their top 5 position. Now, Cold and Acorn, absolute freaks. Cold and Acorn currently have a 1st, a 3rd, and a 5th in FNCS this chapter, all wall contested. They're now 5th at LAN, also wall contested by Andalex and Sato. I don't know how this duo does it. I didn't put them in my top 10 because I said, look, they're contested. They're the absolute goats at spawn fights, but there's just no way at LAN they can still continue to do this. And apparently they do. 232 points. They're a little bit of a jump down from 4th, but still looking extremely good. Next up is a name you probably haven't heard that much about, Huddy and Kovacs. Now, I watch a lot of Huddy streams. I'm a big Huddy fan. He's an incredible player. He's an interesting dude, and a lot of people haven't been focused on him coming into this LAN, myself included. He's the only Czech player playing there. He's going Rebels Roost, contested by Scroll and Sky. Scroll is a player you've heard me talk a lot about in the past on my other social media. He is the kid that plays Fortnite with a scroll wheel for his builds and weapons. He's basically playing Combat Pro on mouse and keyboard. It's insane, and unfortunately for him, it's not currently working. Huddy and Kovacs are doing really, really well at that spawn fight, and it has them in 6th place overall. This is definitely the most surprising performance so far of the LAN event to me. Now, there's a few surprises of teams that are doing really poorly that we thought were going to do well. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as far as teams that no one really thought were going to do that well popping off, Huddy and Kovacs have to be top of your list. Behind them is Bolts and Bryce. That might be surprising a lot of other people. I've been gassing up Bolts and Bryce a lot over the last few seasons. They look extremely good. They did bring it back with an 8 elim second in their second last game to get to this point. Really good performance by them. I'm super proud to see them in 7th place. CZB and Nathan, another team that, again, I did talk about in my prediction video. I said, look, I love these guys. I really want them to do well. I just don't see how they're going to when they're contested at Grand Glacier by a Middle East Cal gamer. Now, that is not a really good drop spot. It's a good drop spot. Uncontested, contested, it's an absolute nightmare. I have no idea how CZB and Nathan have found themselves in 8th place while contested at already not a very good drop. Then we have Dukes and Sphinx in 9th. I just, for some reason, always sleep on Dukes. It's just for something. It's something I do. I don't know. I'm really good friends with Dukes. We get along really, really well. I love making fun of him. He likes making fun of me. But for some reason, whenever I do my predictions, I just don't include him. And I can't even tell you why I didn't think he was going to get top 10. I just didn't include him. And here he has proved me wrong yet again in 9th place. Now, the last team I want to talk about in the top 10, obviously the last team in the top 10, we have Toyota. Now, I have nothing to say about this team because, again, they are a small region team out of Asia, but I've been so impressed watching them, and it was in their last 3 games they really started to bring it back. Not getting a lot of elims, but a 0 elim 7th, a 2 elim 9th, and a 4 elim 9th to close out the tournament to jump up into top 10 as the only team outside of EU and NA in the top 10. So including the last LAN where we had MK Papa and Shalom from Asia get top 5, this is a very, very good performance. And again, Asia proving that at least on LAN, they are the best of the smaller regions. Now, I'll go through the rest of the leaderboard a little bit quicker and pick out some teams that I want to talk about as well. Rise and Age is a team that didn't even qualify, getting in as a fill in 11th. Paper and Victor V were actually in 7th place going into game 6 until they had a bug where they died off the Nitro ring. It wasn't even like they didn't jump into the Nitro ring. It wasn't a weird glitch. Well, it was a weird glitch. They had Fizzberry. They did everything to make them not take full damage, and they still did, which was super disappointing. Now, a team that was doing extremely well throughout the tournament, still not doing poorly, but unfortunately had a rough last couple games, Clix and Veno. Now, Clix and Veno in a lot of people's top 5 coming into this, now getting contested by OCE's Damo, has put them in a weird spot. The last game, they tried to fight the OC team, thinking that might change things up. Let's get aggressive on them. Let's try and, push them over, see if we can take their loot and then go on and have a good game. That was their worst game with a 0 elim 33rd. They didn't go down to them, but they wasted so much time and resources fighting them, it hurt their game overall. So it's unfortunate to see. A lot of Clix fans are obviously going to be upset about this. Hopefully they can cook up some kind of strategy coming into day 2. Veno has been very vocal on social media that he is really locked in for this event. So I know he's going to do everything he can, but sometimes even with everything at disposal, there's only so much you can do. So we'll see how this plays out for them on the second day. We have Ping and Walks in 14th, Vidil and Rezon in 15th, Mustache and Malabuka in 17th, despite the fact that they are contested on spawn at Restored Reels. This is a weird spawn fight. The first few games, they kind of fought, didn't fought, and then disengaged. And whenever they disengaged, Mustache and Malabuka went on to do really well. They got a 3rd and a 9th place. However, when they started actually fighting, when OCs, Alex and Worthy were like, no, we're over this. We're sick of splitting. We're sick of getting pushed around. We're going to fight this. They actually beat them 3 times on spawn in a row. Unfortunately, it looks like when Alex and Worthy win the spawn fight, though, they quickly get cleaned up. When Mustache and Malabuka win the spawn fight, though, there's no one to push them. They get their loot and they rotate out. So, unfortunately, despite winning 3 of the spawn fights on the day, Alex and Worthy are doing much, much worse than Mustache and Malabuka. They're way down leaderboard in 35th overall. I also want to talk about, again, Chap and Teeny in 21st, a team with a lot of hype coming into the event. They kicked off with a 7 elim win game 1. They switched their drop spot up. They surprise contested Cooper and Kanata over at the Nitrodrome, which explains why Cooper and Kanata aren't on this list yet. They are really struggling with this contestation, but so is Chap and Teeny. Chap and Teeny had that win, and then they started to struggle a little bit. They got a 2 elim 11th, but other than that, had really rough games. Kanata and Cooper, meanwhile, maybe once they started to recalibrate to getting surprise conned, they brought it back at the end of the day with a 6th and a 4th, but they're still only in 22nd overall. Now, we do have some disappointing performances so far from a lot of the NA guys I was hyped about. Aviv and Booger in 24th, Reet and Ritual in 25th, Muzz and Whale in 29th. I honestly couldn't tell you what's happening there. They're just not playing well. I mean, Visuals and Braids getting added to the tournament, dropping right next to Reet and Epic Whale's teams, maybe messed them up. I don't know, but unfortunately for those 3 teams I had a lot of hope for, and I guess Rapid and Batman Booger I'll put in that list, they're all just not doing that well. And I hate to say it, but I can't really add much more. They're not the only team with a lot of expectations that are struggling though. EU's on that list as well. We have Cammy and Seti, a lot of people's favorites for EU to do really well. They haven't done the greatest this chapter, but they're the LAN GOATs. They're uncontested on a good split. They looked good in the most recent Cash Cup, but for whatever reason, they're in 39th. They're not getting contested like I thought they might. Nothing's changed. They're just not doing well. It sucks to say, but across the board, there's quite a few big names who are struggling. Again, towards the bottom of the list, you start to get a lot of the more of the smaller region teams. Like I said, Alex and Worthy in 35. We have Kazi and Aspect, the team who switched their drops away from the raft in 47th. Maybe they come back to the raft. Hey, it's not working when we're dropping on Prism. May as well drop on Peterbot and see if we can do a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, in last place, we do have Asia's Shalom and Zagu, which is very surprising from a duo that, again, Shalom came top 5 at the last LAN event. Zagu is a legendary player on Asia who comes up with crazy strategies. I'm very surprised to see that they're the team in last place overall. Talked about a bunch in this video. 1.5 times multiplier, still 6 games to go, so anything can change. Peterbot and Poyo could lose this. Teams that like Clix and Venom, who are maybe outside that top 10 with a really big day too, they could have a massive jump up on leaderboard, even win it if they go crazy enough. It genuinely is still doable, but Peterbot and Poyo have a very solid lead and right now are set to have one of the best chapters in history. And again, to recap this, that means they would have gotten a second in the first FNCS, a first in the second FNCS, a first in the third FNCS, then Peterbot has come second at Esports World Cup and second at DreamHack Dallas, and then would now win this LAN event. That would be one of the most, if not the most dominant chapters we've ever seen. I can only really think of maybe like Booga and Mero's three-peat being up there with that. You got to remember the context of their wins as well, winning with over 1,000 points, getting 6 out of 6 wins in the Duo Cash Cup finals, which has never happened. They're having an absolutely dominant spree, and it looks like whether you love it or hate it, LAN isn't changing that.